The year was 1865, and the frontier lay stretched wide beneath a sky stained the color of blood and dust. Evening shadows crept long across the plains, carrying with them the silence that followed the day's last gunshot or dying hoofbeat. The land held its breath, and so did Thomas Hale, a rancher who had learned long ago to trust the quiet less than the noise. Quiet meant something was watching. Quiet meant something was coming. He was riding fence when he saw her. She was a smear against the horizon at first, stumbling through sage and sand like some pale spirit loose from the earth itself. Bare feet left tracks dark with blood. Her hair, tangled in black as midnight water, clung to her face. The dress she wore was torn ragged, mud-caked, and burned at the hem. He thought she was a mirage until the wind shifted and carried her voice to him, raw and thin. "Don't look at me," she whispered, and though the distance was near 40 paces, he heard it as if she stood close enough to touch. He slid from the saddle, boots crunching dry weeds, his hand instinctively brushing the butt of his coat. The woman staggered, fell to her knees, then tried to crawl further, as though the very act of his gaze seared her. He saw bruises blooming dark across her cheek, her arms. The frontier was merciless, but these were not the wounds of wilderness. They were the handprints of man. "Miss," he said, his voice low, steady, carrying the way of command he'd once used in darker places back east. She flinched as if struck, huddling, arms wrapped across her chest. "Don't look at me," she whispered again, the words torn between plea and warning. His jaw tightened. He lowered himself slowly, one knee sinking into the dust until his eyes were level with hers. "Then I won't," he said softly, "but I'll not leave you lying in the dirt." The wind shifted. Far off, a hawk cried, and something about the sound made her shiver. Thomas slipped off his coat, a rough canvas thing worn from work and weather, and laid it across the ground between them. "You can take it or not," he said, "but the night won't show mercy. Coyotes will smell the blood." Her eyes darted to him, just a flicker of firelight in their depths, before she snatched the coat, pulling it tight around her shoulders as though it might erase the bruises. He stood slowly, giving her space, but kept his voice gentle. "My ranch is near. You'll not make it far on your feet. Let me put you on my horse." Her head shook violently, tangled strands whipping. No horse. No man. No. The words broke apart, lost in a ragged breath. She tried to rise, but her legs betrayed her. He took one step closer, just one, and her whole frame went taut, like a deer cornered. He stopped where he was, raising his palms slightly. "I'll not touch you without your leave, but you need shelter." She pressed her forehead to the dirt, shaking. He knew then that whatever shadows hunted her were not just behind but still upon her. Somewhere out there a man or men wanted her found. He felt the weight of his rifle slung across his back, and an old part of him stirred. The war had left him tired of killing, but it hadn't taken away the instinct. At length she lifted her head. Her lips were cracked, her eyes hollow but fierce. "You take me," she rasped. "You bring death to your door." Thomas looked at her, at the bruises and the way she fought even against her own weakness, and something inside him hardened. "Death has been to my door before," he said. "I'm still here." He turned, leading his horse closer, slow and steady, as one would approach a wounded animal. The mare snorted but stood calm. He set a canteen down on the dirt between them. She hesitated, then seized it, drinking so fast she choked. He waited until she steadied, then offered the stirrup. "You got my word, miss. No eyes unless you give them. But walking barefoot will kill you quicker than any man." Minutes passed before she let him help her, though he never laid a hand upon her skin. She clutched the saddle horn, dragged herself up, and he saw how every motion cost her pain. He mounted behind, keeping the reins loose. The ride back was silent but heavy. The night came quick, stars cutting holes in the sky. Every coyote's cry set her shuddering. Thomas listened beyond the ordinary sounds, the rustle of grass, the creak of leather, waiting for the unnatural one, the crack of twig beneath a boot or the snort of another horse. When at last the cabin rose out of the dark, she nearly wept. His place was no grand homestead, only a one-room cabin with a loft, a lean-to barn, and the wide nothing of prairie in every direction. But it stood, and it meant a kind of safety. He helped her down, still careful, giving her distance. She hobbled toward the cabin door, clutching his coat. Inside, the smell of wood smoke lingered from the morning fire. He lit the lantern, its glow throwing long shadows across rough-hewn walls. She froze in the doorway, her gaze darting, measuring. He pointed to the cot against the far wall. There, you can rest. I'll take the chair by the fire. She clutched the coat tighter, her face unreadable in the flicker. Slowly, she crossed the threshold like one expecting a trap. Thomas busied himself with the fire, giving her back to breathe. Sparks caught, flames licked. Warmth began to push back the chill. He poured beans from a tin into a pot, set it to heat. The simple rhythm of work steadied him, though every sense remained on edge. He could feel her fear like a storm pressing close. When he turned, he found her sitting on the cot, legs drawn up, bare feet raw and bleeding. He set a basin of water nearby, a strip of cloth, but said nothing. She eyed it, then him, suspicion worn with exhaustion. At last she dipped the cloth, began to wash the blood away. He saw the tremble in her hands, but kept his gaze low, focusing on the fire. Only after she finished did she speak, voice little more than a crackle of ash. Why? He looked up. Why what? Why help me? You don't know who I am, what I've done, what follows. Thomas leaned back, the firelight carving lines deep in his face. A man don't need a reason to keep someone from dying on his land. And I reckon whatever follows, it ain't just. Her eyes glistened, though she blinked away. She whispered something, maybe a name, but the crackle of fire stole it. He didn't press. The frontier had taught him that answers came in their own time, or not at all. The meal was plain, but she ate as though starved near to death. When her shoulders sagged, sleep tugging, he pulled the blanket from the chair and set it at the foot of the cot. You'll sleep, he said. I'll keep watch. Her gaze flicked to him, sharp with fear. Don't come near me. He nodded once. You have my word. Hours passed with only the crack of logs and the low hum of wind against the walls. Thomas sat in the chair, rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the window. Beyond the glass, the prairie stretched into blackness, and somewhere in that blackness he felt the weight of eyes. He thought of the bruises, the torn dress, the way she recoiled from his voice. Whoever had marked her was still hunting. He'd wager his ranch on it. Near midnight, the horses in the lean-to stirred. Thomas rose without sound, moving to the door. Outside, the moon cast silver over plains. He scanned the distance. A rider moved along the ridge, slow, deliberate. Too far to see his face, but the shape was clear enough. A man searching. Thomas's fingers tightened on the rifle. He stepped into the yard, keeping low. The rider paused, scanning the valley, then nudged his horse onward, disappearing behind the ridge. Thomas waited until the night swallowed the hoofbeats. Only then did he return inside. The woman's eyes were open, glimmering in the firelight. She had seen his rifle, the way he moved. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. He set the weapon across the chair again, sitting down heavy. For a long while, silence stretched. Then she spoke, so soft he almost thought it a dream. You'll regret it. Helping me. Thomas stared into the fire, the flames dancing like memory. I've regretted worse, he said. She turned her face to the wall. At last sleep claimed her. But Thomas did not sleep. He watched the window, the fire, the door, his thoughts circling the same truth. Trouble had come, wrapped in bruises and bare feet, whispering not to look. But he had looked, and there was no turning back. The hours dragged slow. Each snap of fire, each sigh of the wind carried weight. He thought of the rider, the deliberate way he had searched the land. Scouts came first. More would follow, and when they did, the walls of this cabin would mean little. Still, he would not send her away. By dawn, the plains were pale gold, the horizon smoldering with light. The woman stirred, eyes heavy, her face soft in sleep. Thomas rose, stretching stiff limbs, and stepped outside. The air was cool, sweet with dew. He scanned the ridge again. Nothing. Yet the silence told him more than noise ever could. When he returned inside, she was sitting upright, clutching the coat around her. She met his eyes for the first time, truly met them for an instant. He saw something fierce beneath the fear, a spark that hadn't yet been stamped out. Then it was gone, and her gaze dropped. He poured coffee, handed her the tin cup. She hesitated, then took it, hands trembling. Steam curled between them like unspoken words. The day had only just begun, but Thomas knew the peace of it would not last. Out there, shadows rode with purpose, and inside his cabin sat the reason why. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But he knew one thing with a certainty born of war and blood. Whatever hunted her would soon come hunting him. And when that time came, the ranch would not stand silent. He looked at her again, the bruises half hidden by his coat, the bare feet now wrapped in a blanket. She whispered once more, almost to herself, "Don't look at me." Thomas did not answer. He only watched the fire, rifle steady on his knees, as the frontier waited for the storm to break. The storm that threatened on the horizon came with the dawn, not of thunder or rain, but of dust. By midday, the sky was a gray-brown curtain, and grit rasped against the windows of Thomas Hale's cabin. The woman, he still did not know her name, sat at the table, sewing needle in hand, mending one of his old shirts with stitches crooked but determined. Her bare feet were wrapped in cloth strips he had cut from a sack. She had refused the boots he left for her, as if the simple gift was too heavy a debt. Every gesture carried the weight of fear, but beneath it there was steel. He saw it in the way she worked her hands, in the way she lifted her chin when the wind howled like wolves outside. Thomas worked the fire, checking the beans and cornbread he had set to cook. The ordinary rhythm of ranch life went on, though every moment was haunted by the memory of the rider he had seen the night before. Trouble was circling, drawing nearer, and it would not be long before the first shot was fired. He felt it like a horse feels a storm in its bones. "You keep busy," he said, not looking at her directly. She nodded, threading the needle again. Her voice, when it came, was low but steady. "If I don't, I think too much." "Thinking can be dangerous," Thomas said. He set the poker down, leaned against the hearth, and studied her from the corner of his eye. "Best thing about ranch life, it wears you out so much you don't have time for ghosts." Her hands slowed. "Ghosts don't leave, not when they're still alive." The words hung heavy in the air. Thomas did not press. He knew she meant the men who had hurt her. They weren't finished, and neither was she. By evening, the dust storm had passed, leaving the land scoured clean. Thomas saddled his horse and rode into town for supplies, though his true purpose was to listen. A man didn't survive long in the frontier by ignoring whispers. At the trading post, voices ran low, the air thick with unease. Strangers had been through that morning, for men hard-eyed, well-armed. They asked questions about a woman. Descriptions were vague, but Thomas knew. He kept his face still, buying flour, coffee, and cartridges with the same calm as any rancher preparing for a long month. Inside, his blood burned. "They head west," the storekeep muttered, weighing the flour. "But I reckon they'll circle back. Men like that always do." Thomas gave a single nod, mounted his horse, and rode hard for home. When he reached the cabin, the woman was outside, gathering wood. She froze when she saw his face, reading the truth there before he spoke a word. Her breath caught, and for the first time she asked something of him willingly. "Tell me." "They're close," he said. "4 of 'em, maybe more. They'll come this way." She swayed, then steadied, clutching the wood against her chest. "Then I have to go. Tonight. You'll be safe if I leave." Thomas dismounted, jaw tight. "That's the quickest way to die. Alone on foot, you'd last a day. Maybe." Her eyes flashed. "Better me than you." He stepped closer, and she did not recoil this time, though her shoulders trembled. "Listen to me. Whatever those men done to you, they'll pay. But you run. You'll only give them what they want. A clean trail, no fight." She shook her head, clutching the wood tighter. "You don't know what they are." "I don't need to," Thomas said. "I've known their kind before. War made men like that. Left 'em hollow, mean. They take because they can't build." They break because they don't know how to mend. His voice softened. But you ain't hollow. You ain't broke, either. Not all the way. Her eyes shone, though she blinked the tears away. She dropped the wood, turned, and went inside without another word. That night, a storm of a different kind struck. The sky cracked with lightning, rain slashing the land. Thomas and the woman worked side by side to drive the cattle into the corral. Thunder spooked the herd, hooves pounding mud as they scattered. She stumbled, nearly trampled, but Thomas caught her arm and pulled her clear. She wrenched free, wild-eyed, but did not run. Instead, she grabbed a lantern, waving it to steer the cattle back. Mud streaked her face, hair plastered to her cheeks, but there was fire in her eyes now, not just fear. By the time the herd settled, both of them were soaked, panting, covered in muck. She leaned against the fence, laughing, a broken, breathless sound that carried the edge of hysteria. "I thought the storm would kill me before the men did," she said. Thomas tipped his hat back, rain running off the brim. "Storm's honest. Tells you right out it means to kill you. Men ain't so honest." The laugh faded from her lips. She looked at him a long moment, then turned away, whispering, "My name's Elena." It was the first gift of trust she had given him. Days passed, heavy with waiting. Elena moved through the cabin with more purpose now. She cooked, swept, even mended his coat. Each act was small, but it stitched her back together bit by bit. Thomas saw it. He also saw the way her eyes darted to the horizon, the way her hand trembled when thunder rumbled or a horse snorted in the dark. Healing was slow, but fear never slept. One afternoon, Thomas found sign on the edge of his land. Hoof prints. Fresh. A single rider had come close, then pulled back. A scout. His blood ran cold. He returned to the cabin, rifle in hand, and Elena saw his face. "They're here," she whispered. "Not all of them," Thomas said grimly, "but one, and that means the rest ain't far." He waited for her to panic, but instead she straightened, her chin lifting. "Then we fight." He studied her, surprised by the steel in her voice. "You sure?" "They'll never stop," she said, voice shaking but fierce. "They'll take me back. And if they can't, they'll kill me. I won't go back." Thomas nodded once. "Then we'll make our stand here." That night, the scout returned. Thomas caught him near the barn, creeping through the shadows. The man wore a sneer, pistol loose in his grip, but he never saw Thomas step from the dark. The fight was short, brutal. 2 shots, 1 cry, then silence. Thomas dragged the body into the gully, covering it with brush. But he knew it would not be long before the others realized their man had not returned. When he came back to the cabin, Elena sat by the fire, her eyes searching his. He didn't need to speak. She saw the blood on his shirt and knew. Tears welled, but she did not weep. Instead, she whispered, "It's my fault. I brought this to you." Thomas shook his head. "Fault don't matter. Only what you do next." She stared at him a long time, then whispered, "He'll come. My husband. He leads 'em." The words cut deeper than any blade. Thomas froze. Husband, the man who had bruised her, hunted her, broken her. Not just some outlaw, her own blood-tied tormentor. "Then he'll find more than he bargained for," Thomas said quietly. "I promise you that." Elena buried her face in her hands. For the first time, she wept without shame. Thomas turned his gaze to the fire, giving her the dignity of silence. But inside, something roared awake, a fury he thought the war had burned out of him. No man had the right to claim her soul with fists and chains. No man had the right to hunt her across God's earth. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. The planes were waiting, holding their breath, as though they too knew the reckoning was near. By dawn, Thomas had laid out every rifle, every cartridge, every knife. Elena rose from the cot, her eyes swollen but steady. She picked up one of the pistols, weighed it in her hand. It shook at first, but then her grip tightened. "You know how to use it?" Thomas asked. Her mouth twisted. "He taught me. Said I'd need it if anyone came after what was his." She raised the pistol, aimed at the door. Her hand no longer trembled. Now I'll use it against him. Thomas felt something like pride stir. He stepped close, not touching, but near enough she felt the steadiness of his presence. "We'll be ready," he said. The horizon burned with sunrise, blood-red and merciless. Somewhere beyond it, riders gathered, steel and hatred in their hearts. Elena stood barefoot on the rough plank floor, bruises fading but spirit unbroken, a pistol steady in her hand. Thomas Hale, scarred by war and solitude, watched her and knew this was a battle he had been meant for all along. The silence before the storm deepened, thick as gunpowder waiting for the spark. And both of them understood, by the next sundown, the land would drink blood. The sun rose hard and red, the kind of dawn that promised blood. Thomas Hale stood on the porch with his rifle in hand, eyes fixed on the far line of prairie where the world met the sky. Elena was inside, silent as a shadow, moving with purpose. She had taken to wearing his coat, sleeves rolled high, her bruises fading but not gone. Each mark was a reminder, each scar a vow. Today the reckoning would come. Neither of them doubted it. By noon the stillness broke. Dust rose on the horizon, a low storm of riders. 6, maybe 7. Their silhouettes sharpened as they drew closer, the sun glinting off iron and steel. Thomas felt his pulse slow in the old soldier's rhythm. Breath steady, sights clear, every detail burned into him. He had stood in lines before, waiting for men to come kill him. The feeling never left. Inside, Elena's voice cut the silence. "It's him." Thomas did not turn. He didn't need to. He could feel her fear, the weight of years pressing down in that single whisper. "Stay sharp," he said. "Keep low. Don't fire unless you must." But when she stepped beside him, pistol in hand, there was no trembling. Her bare feet pressed firm against the porch planks. For the first time, she looked like someone ready to face the fire. The riders slowed as they neared, dust curling around them. At their head rode a man broad of shoulder, face dark with cruelty. His hat was pulled low, but even from a distance the swagger marked him. The certainty of a man who had always taken and never been denied. He reined in, scanning the cabin like it was already his. "Elena!" The voice thundered across the yard, deep and mocking. "Come out, girl. You had your fun running. But it ends here. You know you belong to me." Elena flinched, lips tightening. Thomas shifted the rifle higher against his shoulder. "Stay behind the wall," he said. But Elena stepped forward, not past him, only close enough that the outlaw could see her shape in the doorway. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I'm not yours, Caleb." The name rang like a shot. The man laughed, cruel and low. "That what you think? You carry my mark. My ring, my brand, my bed. No man or law can change that." He gestured, and 2 riders began to spread wide, flanking. Thomas raised his rifle. "One more step," he barked, "and you'll feed the dirt." The riders checked, surprised by the iron certainty in his voice. Caleb sneered. "You think you can keep her? You don't know what she's done. Stranger. She's wild, a liar, a thief. She don't deserve your protection." Thomas's finger curled near the trigger. "She deserves better than you." The standoff cracked like glass. One outlaw spurred his horse forward, gun drawn. Thomas fired. The man pitched from the saddle, his blood soaking dust. Chaos exploded. Shots ripped the air. Horses screamed. Smoke rolled thick across the yard. Thomas moved with cold precision, rifle barking, each shot aimed true. Elena crouched behind the doorway, returning fire when she could, her pistol leaping in her hand. The cabin shuddered under the assault. Planks splintering, glass shattering. The smell of powder burned their throats. A bullet carved into Thomas's shoulder, spinning him back. Pain flared hot, but he gritted his teeth, reloading fast. Elena cried out, scrambling to his side. "You're hit." "Keep shooting," he growled, shoving her toward cover. "Don't stop, no matter what." The outlaws pressed harder, circling, firing. 2 dropped from his bullets, but more surged. The air roared with gunfire. Elena, lips drawn tight, rose and fired into the storm. One man reeled, clutching his chest. Another cursed, his horse screaming as it went down. Through the smoke, Caleb rode closer, a revolver in each hand, his face twisted with rage. "Elena, you can't kill me. You'll always be mine." Something inside her broke then, not with fear, but with fury. She stepped from the doorway, hair wild, eyes blazing. Thomas shouted, but she didn't falter. She raised her pistol and fired. Caleb's hat spun from his head, bullet grazing him. He roared, returning fire, but she dropped low, the round smashing into the wall behind her. Thomas fired again, catching one outlaw clean through the chest. The man toppled, and the tide shifted. Smoke thinned, revealing only 3 riders still upright. They hesitated now, wary of the pair who fought like corner wolves. Caleb spat into the dirt. "Fine then. If you want her that bad, ranch her, you'll die for her, and she'll crawl back to me when you're gone." His words cut deep, but Thomas steadied himself, wiping blood from his arm. "Only thing you'll get today is a grave." With a scream, Caleb charged. His men followed, hoofs thundering. Thomas leveled a rifle, fired, dropped one. Elena fired 2, striking another. The last swung wide, circling, but Thomas had no time for him. Caleb bore down like a storm, revolver blazing. Thomas dove aside, bullets sparking off the porch. Caleb leapt from the saddle, tackling him into the dirt. The guns went flying. Fists and fury took their place. Caleb struck hard, years of brute strength behind each blow. Thomas's vision swam, but he fought back, landing a punch that split the man's lip. They grappled, rolling through the dust, each trying to reach for the knife at their belts. "Elena!" Thomas gasped, struggling as Caleb's hand closed on his throat. "Run!" But she did not run. She grabbed a fallen pistol, hand steady. She aimed at the man who had haunted her life, who had branded her with fear. Caleb sneered, pressing the blade against Thomas's neck. "Do it, girl. Kill me, and you'll always remember. You'll never be free." Her fingers shook on the trigger, memories flooding, nights of fists, years of chains. She saw Thomas, face straining beneath Caleb's grip, eyes burning with trust. Not command, trust. Elena pulled the trigger. The shot cracked like thunder. Caleb jerked, eyes wide with disbelief, the knife clattering from his hand. He fell back, clutching his chest, blood spreading fast. His mouth opened, but no words came, only a wet gasp. He collapsed into the dirt. Still, for a long moment, silence held. The last outlaw, seeing his leader fall, fled hard across the plains. Hoofbeats dwindled until only the wind remained. Elena stood trembling, pistol smoking in her hand. Thomas pushed himself upright, wiping blood from his mouth. He looked at Caleb's body, then at her. She was shaking, her eyes wide, but she did not look away from what she had done. "It's over," Thomas said softly. She turned to him, voice breaking. "No, it's just beginning." The pistol slipped from her hand, clattering to the ground. She dropped to her knees, sobs racking her, not of fear but of release. Years of silence, years of terror poured out at last. Thomas moved slowly, painfully, until he knelt before her. He did not touch her, only bowed his head, his voice low. "You ain't us anymore. You never were. Not truly." She looked up at him through tears, whispering the words she had carried like a curse. "Don't look at me." Thomas's eyes met hers, steady, unflinching. "I see you." The fire in his voice steadied her. For the first time in years, she believed the truth, that she was more than what had been done to her. She was Elena. She was alive. She was free. The sun slipped lower, casting long shadows over the cabin and the bodies in the dirt. Thomas rose slowly, offering his hand. She hesitated, then took it, pulling herself to her feet. Together they walked back to the porch, bloodied, weary, but standing. Night fell quiet. The stars burned bright above the scarred land. Thomas tended his wound by the fire, wincing but steady. Elena sat beside him, silent, watching the flames. Neither spoke for a long while. At last she whispered, "What now?" Thomas leaned back, staring at the ceiling beams. "Now we bury the dead, then we keep living. That's all a body can do." She nodded slowly. The fire crackled, the night settling around them. For the first time, the silence did not press heavy with fear. It was peace, fragile but real. Thomas closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him. But his hand rested near hers on the blanket. Not touching, just near. Elena looked at it, then at his face, and something like hope stirred in her chest. The frontier was cruel, but it also gave second chances. Out there, a woman could be more than a man's possession. Out there, a man could fight for more than survival. Together, maybe they could build something the land itself could not break. The narrator's voice lingered, reflective as the wind. In the West, the line between life and death was thin as a trigger pull, and every soul walked alone until the day came they no longer could. But sometimes, when the dust cleared and the smoke faded, two souls found they could walk it side by side. So, what do we take from this tale? Maybe it's this. The frontier was not just a place, but a trial of spirit. And freedom wasn't given. It was seized, clawed, fought for with every breath. Elena found hers at the end of the gun, but what mattered was that she claimed it for herself. If this story stirred you, don't just let it pass like another gust of prairie wind. Share it, speak it, hold it close. For the West was made of such stories, of blood, of fire, of second chances. And maybe, just maybe, yours can be too.